there, and welcome to the Tournament of Stitches 2020. In this video, I will teach you section 1 of the crochet version of this mystery make-along. This is the third year we have done the Tournament of Stitches, and I will not lie, I have really been looking forward to this year. I've had this design made since last year, and I've been holding on to it, knowing that it was the perfect project for this particular event. I hope that you will agree with me. By this point, you should have gone ahead and taken a look at that free pattern available at marleybird.com. I'll put a link in the video description box right down there below. And while you're down there, please smash that like button and let me know that you are participating in this event or that you like this video. You should also have your 3 different colors of worsted weight yarn. I will be using Chic Sheep in this video and in the samples, but overall you want to make sure you have 3 different colors of worsted weight yarn. I do not recommend a variegated yarn. I do like to use solids, semi-solids, or long color changing colors. You really want to make sure these stitches will show up as you're working them. As far as the instructions go, we have thought of everything short of me coming to your house and giving you one-on-one instructions. There are written instructions, there's a chart, there's a diagram, there are these videos, and last but not least, there's all the help from the Marley's Minions Facebook group. With all of these things, you are sure to have great success with this mystery make-along. I really hope you will grab your hook and your yarn and get started with me today. In the video, I will be going over the diagram and the chart. If you need to follow along with the written instructions, you should have no problem doing that along the way. All right, I'm ready to jump in. Let's do this. Okay, this is the tip-off, so to speak. With your color A, chain 33. Then we jump into row 1, where you will single crochet in the second chain from hook and in each chain across. You will end up with 32 single crochets. Then for the next 7 rows, you will chain 1 and single crochet across all the single crochets you've completed, and then you will fasten off your color A and turn. Then for rows 9 and 10, you change to color B, chain 1, single crochet in each single crochet across, and turn. So what does all that mean? Well, it's pretty simple. We're just setting up our project at this point with some single crochets, but the color placement is crucial. So let's take a look at what I've already worked up. On this sample swatch, you can see that in the dark blue section, I have 8 total rows of single crochet, and I have 2 total rows of the light blue. So I started off by chaining 33. I did a single crochet in the second chain from hook and in each single crochet all the way to the end. Then for the next 7 rows, I chained 1 and I single crocheted in each stitch all the way to the end. Chain 1, single crochet to the end, chain 1, single crochet to the end, until I have my total of 8 dark blue rows. It's at the end of row 8 where I actually changed to my light blue color in that last stitch. And then I did light blue with single crochets. Let's see, I say that again. I did single crochets with light blue in each stitch all the way to the end, chain 1, single crochet with the light blue all the way to the end. And it's time for me to begin the mosaic section. Now the mosaic section will have me begin with my color C. And I know that not just because it's written in the written instructions, but when I look at the diagram and the chart, I can see what color the first stitch of that row needs to be. And whatever color the first stitch of the row is, that's the color we will use all the way down the row and back. We will change colors every 2 rows when we work the mosaic stitch section. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how I like to change colors when it's time to do so. Okay, I have to turn my work here. I am right here at the end of what would be my row 10. So I'm going to put my loop back on my hook. And I will go ahead and finish the last single crochet of my row. So I go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. I'm going to grab my next color, and I'm going to have some fun with this. I'm going to use creme de mint, and I'm going to hold it right up against my light blue. Okay, so I have my tail. I left a nice long tail so I can weave it in. I yarn over with my creme de mint, my new color, that would be my color C, and I pull through the 2 loops on my hook. Okay, so now I have a new color. I will turn my work, and now I will continue on working the instructions, either the written instructions or the diagram. So let me go ahead and grab the diagram here first before we look at the chart. All right, so this is the diagram. So we just finished row 10. So we did row 9 of single crochets. We did row 10 of single crochets. We are on row 11, and see how they're black and see how color C is black. So that's how I know I'm working with my color C, okay? So on row 11, I can see here that I'm going to single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to chain 2 and skip a single crochet. Then I will chain, or I will single crochet 1, 2, 3, and then I will chain 1, 2, 3, but skip 2. Then I will single crochet 1, 2, 3. I will chain 2 and skip 1. I will single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4. Chain 2, skip 1. I will single crochet 1, 2, 3, chain 3, skip 2. Then I will single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4, single crochet 2, skip 1, and then single crochet in the last 4. Notice that if I'm skipping 1 stitch, I always chain 2. If I'm skipping 2 stitches, I am always chaining 3. Essentially, you're always chaining 1 more than the number of stitches you're skipping. So if you're skipping 1, you chain 2. If you're skipping 2, you chain 3. If you're skipping 4, you chain 5. See how that works out? Conveniently, on the way back for row 12, you will single crochet in the single crochets, and you will chain the same number of chains as the previous row wherever you see those chains. So on row 12, we would start off with the single crochet 4, chain 2, skip those chains, single crochet 3, chain 3, skip those chains, single crochet 3, chain 2, skip those chains, so on and so forth. See how that works out? Okay, so let's do that to start off here with row 1, or that was not row 1, row 11 here. So we're on row 11. I have my work, I have my color C on my hook, and I will start off here with my yarn right here in that first stitch. So that's 1 and 2, whoops, and 3 and 4. Now I will chain 2, skip 1 stitch, and go to the next one, and I will single crochet the next 3. I will chain 3, skip 2, single crochet in the next 3. Chain 2, skip 1, single crochet in the next 4. Chain 2, skip 1, single crochet in the next 3. Chain 3, skip 2, single crochet in the next 3. Chain 2, skip 1, single crochet in the last 4. Okay? You should have a row that looks a little something like this. Now we will go ahead, turn our work. We will chain 1. You can chain 1 and turn, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to work back. And if we don't want to look at our instructions, all we have to remember is to put a single crochet into each one of the single crochets we completed. And then where we see the chains, we want to make sure we chain the same number of chains we did. If you forgot, check out how many stitches you skipped. So I skipped 1 stitch, so I know I have 2 chains. Skip those chains and then go to the next single crochet. If I don't know how many there I skipped, I can go down here, just count 1, 2 stitches I skipped. So that means I chained 3. Skip those chains and then work your singles. See how easy this is? It becomes very rhythmic. And those chains, what will happen with those is, yes, they're going to show up on the wrong side of your fabric because we will work long double crochets in front of those chains to create mosaic stitches. That does not mean we're going to work around those chains. We aren't doing a spike stitch. We will work in front of the chains with a double crochet so that way we get a really great mosaic look. And that will make sense here in just a minute. All right, so I'm coming up to the end of my row. Make sure you get your single crochet in that last one. And this is where I'm going to change colors. So I have 2 stitches on my hook. I'm going to drop my old color, or the color I was using, pick up the color I want to use, and I'm going to bring it up and crochet with it. Okay? I turn my work, and yes, this is going to place essentially this loop on the front of my fabric here, but I'm not going to worry about that because when I do a border along this whole thing, I can tuck that loop and pull it aside. So I'm not going to stress out about that loop. But now I am ready to go, and now I'm on row 13. Okay? It's on this row that things start to take shape because when I come to these stitches that are chains, I will actually be working down in front of those down into that skipped stitch right down there. Let's take a look at the diagram one more time to see where we are. You can see down here we just completed rows 11 and 12, and now we're on row 13. This is in the color blue, which is color B. It also lets me know that I have the correct color on my hook, okay? So I can see here I chained 1, and I will single 1, 2, 3. I will chain 2, and I will skip 1. Then in the next one, I'm going to double crochet in front of those chains I created on 11 and 12, and I will work that into that single crochet I skipped 2 rows below. Then I will single into that one, chain 2, skip 1, and then I will do a double 2 rows below in front of those chains, and another double 2 rows below in front of those chains. Then I chain 2, skip a stitch, single, single, double down here, chain 2, skip a stitch, single, single, chain 2, skip a stitch, double. See how this is working out? Single, single, chain 2, double down 2 rows below, double down 2 rows below, chain 2, skip a stitch, single, single, double 2 rows below, chain 2, skip a stitch, single, single, single. Okay? All that is written out too, so don't stress it. It'll be all right. But let's go ahead and get started on this, okay? So let's see here. I don't want to use my creme de mint, but I don't want to cut it because I want to be able to pick it up later. I'm going to use what is called my sweet color. It's called Sweet, S-U-I-T-E. All right, so I have to single crochet. Let's see, did I do a chain 1? Nope, I have to chain 1 to begin. Now I will single crochet in the first 3. Now I will chain 2, skip 1, and now this next stitch is going to be a double crochet in front of those chains. So I yarn over my hook, come down here to this skipped stitch right down there. I'll put my hook in, and notice I bring my hook in front of those chains, okay? Those chains are back here hanging out, My hook is right here in front of them. I will yarn over and then pull that loop through. Can you see that? So now it's just set up just like any normal double crochet. And I complete a double crochet. Okay. I skip those chains because now this double crochet takes the place of those chains. I will single crochet in the next 2 singles. So there's 1 and 2. I chain 2, skip a stitch. Now I have these 2 double crochets that I have to create down there. So I yarn over my hook, come down here to the first one, go into the stitch, and make sure I come out, like it's not out the stitch, like I'm just going into the top of the stitch, but I want to make sure I'm not working around these chains. I don't want this, okay? See how that's around those chains? I don't want that. I want to go into the stitch and make sure my hook is in front of those chains, yarn over, pull my loop through, and then create my double crochet. Do that again. I go into the stitch, make sure my hook is in front of those chains, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. So those 2 double crochets take the place of those chains, so make sure you don't work a stitch into those. Okay, so that was my double crochet. Now I have to chain 2, and I have to skip 1 stitch, so I will skip this stitch right here. I will single crochet in the next 2, so there's 1 and 2. Get some more yarn here. I'm doing my chains again, so I'm going to have to double crochet down here into this skip stitch. And then what do I do here? This is a chain 2, skip a stitch, single into the next 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Then I chain 2, skip a stitch, double down here into that skipped stitch, and let's see, then I single in the next 2, chain 2, skip 1, 2 double crochets right down here. So there's 1 and 2. Okay, and I will chain 2, skip a single, do a single in the next 2, do a double crochet into that skip stitch down there, chain 2, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next 3. You see that? Starts to look like something happening now, huh? It's pretty exciting. So at this point, we can turn our work and chain 1, or chain 1 and turn. It really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. So I'm going to turn my work and chain 1, and I'm going to work back. Now I can follow my chart back, or I can just look at my stitches and say, okay, all of my stitches, I want to make sure I put a single crochet into each one. And when there are chains, just know how many chains you skipped, so, or how many chains you made. So there's 2 chains there, or there's 1 skipped stitch, so I know I have 2 chains. So there's 2 chains. But then I have to make sure I do work into the top of that double crochet, right? Because that's now a stitch. So I want to make sure I put a single crochet in the top of any double crochets I created. Okay? If you don't do that, you're going to come up short. So you want to make sure you chain 2 whenever you're supposed to chain 2. But when you come to the stitches that are doubles, so like right there, those are my doubles, I want to make sure I put singles in the top of those doubles. Make sense? It's pretty easy. If you don't want to have to read the instructions all the way back, as long as you're putting a stitch into each one of the actual stitches of the previous row, you're good. And make sure you're putting the chains above any of the chains. And you'll notice like I use my fingers and I really kind of feel, and I'm feeling for like that post of the double. So if I'm like, oh, do I have a double there? Oh, I can feel it and I can put my stitch there. I use my fingers a lot to feel my way across the row. When you finish up the row, don't forget that we're going to change our color on that last stitch. So drop your old yarn, pick up your new, yarn over with your new color, and pull through. Okay, so when you turn your work, your new color is on your hook. Again, don't worry about these floats. We will grab those and tuck them in when we do our border. But at this point, your work is curling up a little bit. That's okay. We can block that out. But it looks a little something like this. It might not look like much yet, but as you continue on, it really starts to take shape and it gets very exciting. All right, let's carry on with the next two rows. Looking at the diagram, we are now on rows 15 and 16. So I'm back to using color C, which I have on my hook, so that's good. And I'm ready to begin. My first stitch is a single crochet into the first stitch, and then I'm back to chain 3 and skip 2. And this time, the next stitch is a double crochet. Again, it's in front of those 2 chains, worked into this single crochet we skipped 2 rows below. See how the color on my hook matches the color of the stitch you're working into 2 rows below? If that's ever not the case, you've done something incorrectly. You should always be working into stitches that are the same color as the color you're working with when you're doing these double crochets, okay? Once you do that double, then we single, single, chain 2, double in front of those chains into that stitch 2 rows below, single, single, double in front of those chains into that stitch 2 rows below, so on and so forth. Okay? By now I'm pretty sure you're starting to get the hang of it, but let's work through this row and see how it looks. We start off this row with our chain 1, so let's begin with that. And I will single crochet into this first stitch right there. And we immediately jump in to chains. So I will chain 3 and skip 2 stitches. Now I'm going to double crochet, so I yarn over my hook, working in front of these chains and into the skip stitch 2 rows below. I want to make sure I put my double crochet down there. Again, I am not working around those chains, I'm working in front of them. Okay, so I did my double. I will single crochet in the next 2, chain 2, skip a stitch. I will double crochet in front of those chains into that single crochet 2 rows below, single crochet in the next 2, double crochet into that skip stitch 2 rows below in front of those chains. You with me so far? Chain 2, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next 2, double crochet into the skipped stitch 2 rows below in front of those chains. You with it so far? Now we're going to chain 3, skip 2, do a double into that skip stitch 2 rows below in front of those chains, single into the next 2, chain 2, skip that stitch, do a double into that skipped stitch 2 rows below in front of the chains, single crochet in the next 2, double crochet into that skipped stitch 2 rows below in front of those chains, chain 2, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next 2, double crochet into that skip stitch 2 rows below in front of those chains, chain 3, skip 2, single crochet in that last stitch. So your work looks a little something like this. It might seem a little funny that this stitch is so far kind of out there like that, but it's totally fine. Once we work the next 2 rows, that will be all taken care of. It won't be any problem. But this is starting to look really good. Let's go ahead, turn our work, and work our way back. You can follow along with the diagram or just read your stitches like I do. Let's do that together. So I'm turning my work. I will chain 1. I'll make sure that I put a single crochet into each stitch and that I chain the same number of chains as I see chains. So there's chains and there's a double right there, so I'll put a single in it. You see what I mean? It's pretty easy stuff. If you don't want to have to go back and look at what you're supposed to do on the rows back, it's pretty easy if you just read what your crochet is telling you. You will put single crochets into each of the stitches and chains over top of all of those chains. And in that last stitch, don't forget, we're going to change colors. So pick up your color C again, yarn over and pull that through and turn your work. Set this down and take a peek at it. So far, it's looking pretty cool. You see how those double crochets we're doing in front of those chains, they drop down and they give us the illusion of stitches being slipped through the opposite color. On the back side of our work, those chains are just hanging out there on the back side. See, there they are, they're right there. They're right there. They're right there. They just hang out there on the back side. And it still is a nice, pretty stitch, and it makes this piece still reversible. It's a really nice, lovely stitch pattern. I love it. Let's take a peek back here at the opposite side because I want to show you something here. And it's at this point that I want to bring in the chart and compare it to the project that we have so far. A chart is a visual representation of the colors we're using when we do the mosaic stitch. So this chart right here represents all 32 stitches and all 38 rows for this particular pattern. The pink down here represents my color A. So on my sample swatch, color A would be this dark blue color. My white indicates my color B. So on my sample swatch, my color B is the light blue, and then color C is the gray color, which would be my green. As I set this piece down, I'm going to cover up the pink section because I want you to notice in the rows here with the color indication, we should be able to follow along with our color and see that those colors are actually doing what we're seeing on here. So for example, row 11 is where we started with color C. Okay, so this would be right here. So we can see that color C goes along this path and then it comes up and it crosses over. So we come along this path, it comes up and it crosses over, right? And then it gets bisected by a blue. Well, that'll happen on the next row, right? Because those are my chains right there. So that will happen on the next row. But we can also see right here, we have green comes across, comes up, comes across, comes down, comes across. So we can see here, green comes across, goes up, goes across, comes down, comes across. You see how it starts to be a pictorial representation of what we're doing? So if you're ever in doubt, it's really good to take a look at this particular chart to kind of see that your stitches that are happening on your mosaic stitch pattern are also looking what looking like what the chart looks like. As you become more and more experienced and advanced with mosaic stitches, it is possible to take a look at a chart just like this and create your stitch pattern just like so. You would know as you follow along when you're supposed to chain 2 and when you're supposed to drop down and do those double crochets. That's a little bit more advanced and is something that we'll go over in some of the later sections. But right now, I want to introduce these charts to you so that way you can see that they're a really great pictorial representation of what you're doing with the mosaic stitches, okay? So at this point, I really feel like with the video instructions of the rows we've already walked through, with the diagram, with the symbols, and with the written instructions, you should be able to accomplish this entire section. Just take one little bit at a time. And remember to work those double crochets in front of your chains 2 rows below. Every time you work those double crochets 2 rows below, it should always be in the same color as the yarn you're using on that particular row. Pretty easy stuff here. I know you can do this. Follow along with your instructions. And if you ever find that you're in a jam, go ahead, head over to the Marley's Minions Facebook group. We're there to help you along the way. We love putting on this tournament of stitches and we want you to be successful. So don't hesitate to come and ask questions. Don't forget to also share your work on social media. Use #MarleyBird. And remember to smash that like button. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye. Thanks so much for joining me on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to hit subscribe. I've put a link right over there, or you can watch a couple of the videos I've already selected for you right down there. If you want to follow me on social media, I've put my links right over there. You could have all Marley all the time. Bye guys.